Last week, the demos, we talked about the SQL index unicity bug in the SQL. And today, let's do it. 8. Do we have demos? And probably have topics and check also for 1.7. Status option 1 since last week, nothing. We talked about it last week. Orchard core since last week we have this one: update identity.web, update mkdocs, useless compiler directive, probably. Because now we only target 6 operated. It was an old one. Enable build acceleration in EBS. Another PR we forgot to merge that makes the build in EBS faster. A new feature of Visual Studio that is configured here. Accelerate builds in Visual Studio by Drew. GetCurrentThemeName renamed GetSiteThemeName. For consistency. Added support for user phone numbers, a new feature added to user store. iUser phone number store. So now the service can store phone numbers and confirmations for phone number. And it can be edited.
Yeah, actually, it doesn't do confirmation.
No, it does.
Because
I didn't say. I didn't say.
Oh, I thought I heard you say it does.
It could store the confirmation.
Okay, yes, it could store. Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I knew what I meant when I said it, and I know it could be confusing, but yeah, I understand. I shouldn't do it because you do all the confirmations. Maybe, you know.
Well, I mean, all you need the service to be able to send a text message, right? In order to do the confirmation, but.
Yeah. It should not be hard based on what you've done for the email confirmation. It should be approximately the same work.
Yeah, it's actually very simple. The only issue is that which implementation of the service we want to adopt, right? That's why I haven't really done any of it yet.
Yeah, at least the UI and the flow. Some parts can do. Or a very famous one. Like Twilio's that thing, but
yeah, Twilio is a big one for sure. I mean, we could definitely have an implementation. It's
is there one simple in ASP.NET?
I think they might have an SDK. I don't know if it. Oh, Twilio. Oh, you mean
in ASP.NET core repository? Do they have an implementation, a reference implementation?
I don't know.
Using a provider. Okay.
Don't know.
Fix the admin UI sort, fix improve. So when there is equality in these values, then it uses ID to keep them deterministic. Otherwise, if you have the same display text, for instance, or the same creativity because it's imported automatically, then you might have random orders. So now this is discriminating all these values. Styling to pager. We saw the pictures, it was nicer. Implement workflow error event. So a new event, and also some integration in the workflow manager, such that the new event, where is the new event? Workflow fault event that you can add to your workflows to intercept errors and then provide nice errors. And I think that was no documentation, but I saw something, or maybe it was. Oh no, there is no documentation, but there is a hint that explains all the properties you can use in this event. Okay. That's great. Thank you, Tony. Add additional text import content because the text is too big here. The title should be small and the description should be bigger. Okay, so now there is liquid support for the content picker. That's the idea. So when you edit the content picker properties, by default, there will be a value of, where is the default value here?
Display text of a content item.
Where? Which file?
It's probably that setting driver in the setting, maybe fourth file down, probably there, or fifth.
Okay.
Yep,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay, good. So this is a default title pattern, which is use a display text, which was the behavior before. Whenever this content picker field was rendering an item, it will use a display text. Now it's using title pattern, which is initialized with the liquid template to render the display text. And then you can change it. Like if you don't like the display text because there is no meaningful display text, but there is another field that you want to use, or you want to add more to the display text, the type, for instance, or another field, then you can change this liquid template.
That default value should have probably been model.content item bar and then display underscore text, because that implementation could be different, but I don't think it's a big deal. Right, because we have a liquid helper to display the text. So I think we should have probably used that there instead of directly.
Which will use that thing for a content item or
correct.
Something else that you can override for anything.
Yep. But if that logic change, it will adhere to it as well.
Yeah. And it also depends. It's also dynamic based on the type of content item, so you can change it by code. Yeah, that will be better. Pipe display text over the body. Add minor text clarification to data migrations. Okay, explaining how migrations work because it was not obvious with that text before. We add to Microsoft Entra ID suggestions, which is a new name for Active Directory. Oh, some old copy paste is now fixed. Okay, because the file changed. That's fine. Fix on Notch PR. Yeah, so we merge the PR, but in the meantime, in the meantime. Before we merge a PR, Sanctuary had applied lots of rules to the source code, and this PR didn't follow the rules. Now it's fixed. Use safer header dictionary extension. Okay. I should managing existing values as an existing values, so I'm trying to attend is better. Invalid casts. Okay. Some things can't be cast too long, so it's a conversion which render more source types. That's good. Or for instance, because there were some changes, there were some changes for IDs in the previous PR, content item ID. For instance, a string won't be able to cast too long, but it can be converted too long. Minor formatting, okay. Implicit using always enabled for everything, okay. Reminder, some now nuget packages can define default usings. So when you import, when you include the package, then some namespaces would be imported automatically. And fixing two Auth deployment sources. Okay. Name again. So using name of, so there is no more issue here. Name of here. No name of here. Interesting. The rest is just string. Even a package. Markdig update. HtmlSanitizer update. Function update. Full text search warning idocs formatting. Okay, just formatting the docs. It's great. Fixed validation class. Okay. Yeah, this one, HTML will be here. This is the manual property. Fixes dotnet nuget. Why?
It used to time out every now and then because the default, I think, is 300.
It's used to time out when?
Every now and then, randomly.
Oh, it's okay. It's not, but this one is nuget, so we don't publish every now and then. We publish every n month once.
So, that's to the cloud. Isn't that's to go into the cloud? The
Cloudsmith?
Cloudsmith?
Yeah, this one is not Cloudsmith. This one is nuget.org. So I will say, wait, yes, sometimes it will time out, so let's update it for Cloudsmith, but this one is a real CI. It's not Cloudsmith. So maybe that's
we should apply the same thing for the Cloudsmith version. I think that's where the issue was.
And I would have said this is where the issue could be, not on nuget. Like it doesn't time out after 6 seconds, like 10 minutes here. Is this seconds?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, that's weird. Or is it the full? Because I would say that's per package. So maybe CloudSmith has some issues, and you will see that. That's why I'm like, why did we change that? Because we haven't tried this command line in like months. So why is it coming? 14.0, 14.082. What's this one? This is preview.net push. No, that's not this one. Let us build that and open at CloudSmith. Okay. There are two PRs, 82, 83. Default is 5 minutes, and our saying is 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, we get push. I'm completely confused here. Okay, this one is complete. Okay, so this is fine. I think so. Maybe I should change it everywhere. Missing update for pro package. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yep.
Yeah, okay, so the same thing on both. And how did I miss it in there? Here. Okay, that was the next one. Okay, one is changing the place and one will get a PR. Okay. That explains. So in this case, it's okay. So it's fixing this one and the other one is just like, okay, let's tweak to there. Even though it shouldn't be an issue. Okay. Honestly, if it fails after 5 minutes, 10 minutes won't change anything. The service is probably down to update the package. So, good. Questions on these changes?
If you want to talk about 1.7, I have an issue to talk about if possible after maybe.
Let's see. Issues 171. We still have left this one.
I don't think this is a stopper or blocking it. I mean, it is definitely an issue, but I don't think you should block 1.7.
Nope. So what else?
There is one issue I like to see if you have more insight on. That fourth one down. IURL helper doesn't seem. No, I'm sorry. Go down more. A couple more. 6. I can't count. Yep, that one. So the problem that I ran into is I want to generate an email, right, through a background task. So, you know, every half an hour, whatever, check and send an email. So I want to be able to add the URL for a content item, right? So I reproduce, I put some code in there. If you scroll down, you'll see where. So you'll see how I put a template, liquid template, and then I try to render it, right? And the problem is it's failing. It's not returning a URL. The display URL helper, which we have in the code, it doesn't work. It returns null. And the reason it returns null because this is a background task and it's running and there is no router. So those values that we send, there's no router, so it can't generate the URL. I mean, what is it?
That's a very common and known solved problem that was solved maybe the day after we started Orchard Core, because that was a very common problem in Orchard 1. As soon as we had background tasks, we had to have something that would generate URLs correctly without a valid request. So I see Jean-Thierry has commented something below, and I haven't seen what is commented, but I bet it was working and it got broken at some point, because that's very common, and we've done whatever we could and we had to make it work. For instance, this is one reason we have a base URL property in the settings, because you need to be able to provide the root of the URL that you will generate, even if there is no request coming to a domain. So what's the domain name you want to use? What's the scheme you want to use, and so on. So what did Jean-Thierry say? Okay, so you see, it's supposed to have all of these with fake values, so we can generate even shapes and everything that will accept, that will need a view context and action context and everything to render URLs, not just liquid actually.
Yeah, now these are not, you don't have to worry about these comments now. They're kind of irrelevant.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm just not sure what's the best approach about, somehow adding a router, even
So
when
you
it
are
comes
still missing something. You can't use display URL. You still can't do that.
Well, if we can't do that, then I mean, we can't really support liquid completely from a background task.
Yeah, it should work. That should work because we provide everything. We have everything in the DI that is mocked, or we find an implementation for everything such that we can do such thing here. Liquid template measurement, everything should be there available, such that this works with display URL definitely.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did the debugging. The issue here is that the route collection has no router. So that's why I can't build the URL. So somehow we would probably have to register a router in that route collection in order for it to be able to build the URL.
Interesting. It would be nice also to see if you can render a shape that uses a razor template. Because this one will also, like the action context and routers. Okay, but the routers only contain an empty route connection. So what you're saying is that we don't have the routes themselves, so we can't use display URL like this because it will use the route for content item per type. That seems very weird.
And we can't build the application like that from a background task because the iApplication the iApplication
it has worked. Like we could render emails with links to stuff.
So absolute URL helper works because that uses a different helper to generate the URL. But the display helper or the display URL helper here, it uses a dictionary, and that needs, like, we pass the area name, content ID, action name, and so on and so forth, right? So in order for it to populate that, I mean, if you want, look at that display URL filter, you'll see what I'm talking about. But that requires a router in order for it to create that. Yeah, see that one? Because it uses a content method on the URL helper for that. Yep. The absolute URL.
The absolute URL is different. The absolute URL is just add. Wait, it's not just adding the base one. So absolute URL. Yes, so URL has got two absolute URL relatives. But the other one, where is that? The display.
That class is called display URL filter. Display URL filter. That's a class name. It's right there on line 145 in that startup class. Yeah.
Same thing here. This is for content item.
So at the end of the day here, we just create a route value dictionary and pass it to the route URL helper.
Which one do you say is no? Nothing
So
here is
line
no,
53 returns no.
but this is valid.
Correct.
Okay.
But see, if you look in the code in the ASP.NET, that method, the route URL, in order for it to generate, it needs a router. So if you look at the the file and it's called URL helper extensions.
Mm-hmm. But I wonder has been. Or maybe no, because maybe they never tried to background task. Because probably it's tried in a workflow, but workflow is triggered by a request. So that's probably why it worked. And I was explaining like we can send emails with URLs, but it was during a request, not in a background task. Okay, so it's missing something for a background task.
Yeah, it's definitely missing a router.
I'm sure we can get that somewhere. If we can get it from a request, we can pick up one, I'm sure. So this is something that is initialized only on the first request. So that's why it's not available in the background. just because we can have these even without a request.
So even like, the iApplication builder is null, right? So you can't even use it to initialize that. Like, you could probably add a logic because the background is a singleton. You could add a logic that say, hey, build the app for this class, which is the background, and run it only once. But the iApplication builder is null. So you can't really initialize all the routes from all the features that we have.
On the first request, that's okay.
Yeah, actually, funny thing that last comment you added, I have another issue that I just recently added, which because if the tenant isn't warmed up or isn't running, background task won't run.
Yeah,
So first, yeah.
That's what I'm wondering, because we can't, there is no lazy loading of tenants if background task work as the app is started, which means there is no lazy loading because there is always a background task for tenant. So should background task only be started when something is using the app, or should we have a custom mode?
I have another issue that said auto warm up tenants with enabled background tasks. So if there is enabled background tasks, it might make sense for us to auto load these tenants, because otherwise background task won't work if the site isn't busy.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's my comment here. Maybe we should be able to tell tenants, you are not lazy loaded, you are loaded automatically when the application starts, because for instance, you have background tasks. So you need to be loaded. So that will solve the issue, which is a tenant, if it's lazy loaded, doesn't have any background task until there is a request. Or if a tenant has to be eager loaded, then its background task will start and all the services will run as the app. Delay loading.
But either way, I don't know if that will solve the problem.
Yes,
I mean, it would solve the problem of running the background tasks, sure, but it doesn't solve the problem of not having a router to generate URLs.
The first comment here is that today we only compute the router and the routes on the first request in this component. So we know how to do that because we do that in this component. we just don't do that for background task. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. But if we do that, then we need to load everything, and there is no more lazy loading. So that's why it's all related. So if we say, yes, we can have tenants that are eager loaded, then we can also say, when there is a background task, we can load all the routes like this for free, or we are okay to do that. We know how to do that because we explicitly want it to be loaded. The concern here is that it was done only in the first request, just because we need all the startup to be executed. And maybe when it's done on the first request, we can reuse the same instance on the background task somehow.
So when we run the app for the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just going based on my understanding, we figure out all the tenants and we create IOC dependency injection container for each instance, right?
Yes.
That is something done pre-configure. Like there is no loading. That's something we always do. But the first HTTP request that comes in, we build the router and stuff like that, right?
So the DI is the blueprint. So the list of services that we want and their lifetime is known, but we actually create the container on the first request. So we do build container on the first request. So the singleton, yes. So it's built on the first request, and the middleware pipeline is also built on the first request.
For all tenants, right?
For the first request of each tenant. So if you have 1,000 tenants, but you just send one request to one tenant, only this tenant will be created, the DI and the middleware.
So we can't really say in the modular tenant router middleware, we can't say, hey, if this tenant has one registered instance of iBackground service, then, get the tenant running.
We could.
That won't work.
But every one of them would have one all the time. So we won't do that. What we can do is tell the router middleware that, oh, this one we want it to be always on. Not lazily, not delayed, but eagerly loaded. DI, middleware pipeline, and background tasks, because background tasks will require the DI. We could just say a hybrid mode where only the DI and the background task, but not the middleware. Why not? So and that will just be a configuration. So let's see what Jean-Thierry has to say about that. But yeah, that has to work somehow. Yeah, interesting. The fact that it's HTTPS hard-coded, it's kind of annoying, but
yeah, that's what I looked at it. As soon as I looked at it, I'm like, it doesn't look right.
It could be a configuration, but what will you put instead of HTTPS? HTTP, it will be even worse. Because you have to put a value, you can't say it's dynamic. When you generate a URL, which one do you want to use?
Right. We should be able to know the current one and use it.
No, there is no current. It's a background.
Yeah.
It's a background. Yeah. There is no current. Like there is no domain. You have to set in settings.
Maybe it should be part of a settings then. The app settings for each tenant.
Exactly. It should be part of the settings. Fine. Because today we have the domain name, the base URL for those as the things. But we don't have the scheme, right? But would you ever type HTTP? No, you would never type it. So that's why I'm saying it's fine to have it as hard-coded because we would type HTTP instead of HTTPS. Nowadays. Like, would you generate?
It might be a valid reason to put it, but it's just weird to see it hard-coded in the code, is what I was saying.
Sure. you can find an issue to say, let's make it something the same way we have base URL. Let's make it a default scheme and initialize it with HTTPS just in case. But today doesn't bother me much because like nobody will generate an email or a URL with just HTTP.
Yeah.
At least for development, maybe you need that because you test locally and you don't have HTTPS. So
right. Okay. Yeah.
Anything else interesting?
No, I think that's it. You already commented
1.7.
on the.
So we shipped 1.7. We start everything.
I think we should.
We have a branch right now, no? Don't we?
I don't think so.
So let's create a PR/branch with all the things we need, like we did last time. It went smoothly, and we fixed some issues for the publishing. I remember we had issues with the owners of the packages, so it should be fixed. So that should be.
Do you want to first release the translation?
That's what we will do. Yeah, we will do that. Check the translations. Release on Cloudsmith. Try it like we did last time. So whoever wants to do something like this, start on that, and then we continue on Thursday. If not, finish everything on Thursday.
Sounds good.
Antoine, if you want to update the translation files in the meantime. And that's it. Okay, all good. Merge all the things that you think is safe until then. Safe and useful. If it doesn't have anything, there is no. We don't need to do that.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone. See you on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.